We, have participation with our stakeholders. We're involved with a lot of those. We coordinate our economic analysis, our environmental analysis, and basically, my office has to keep all the records for all the rule makings. So that can be kind of a lot just in and of itself. We have people also within my office that you've probably heard of information collection notices. Information collection is basically we have to account for every burden that the regulations place on the stakeholders. So, say they have to submit a permit that takes them a certain amount of time to do that. We have to account for that burden on industry or the stakeholders. And so we have to update that information every few years. So we're always doing that, and that's for every burden that we have in our regulations. Another big piece of our my office is development of the standards, uh, you know, the standards, industry standards, and how those are developed. We have a people in our group that attend a lot of these meetings, and they're actively involved within pretty much most of the major industry standards that are being developed or reaffirmed or updated. So we can get a good feel of how we want to handle those within our rule makings. My office also coordinates our guidance documents, NTL development, so we have some type of consistency. And also a big piece is my office is the kind of the liaison between the Federal Register and our bureau. We have to work with the Federal Register a lot to make sure that our documents are up to government standards, and we'll talk about that later on. First off, why we talking about regulations? As you guys all aware, this is in our mission statement, and we have strategic plans that discuss the importance of our regulations and how it's tied in with what you guys do with either inspections, permitting, um, document review, everything. It's all tied into regulations. So one of the big questions we get is, so why do we need to have these regulations? First of all, most of you are familiar with things such as um, the OCS Lands Act. Some of these laws require us to actually develop regulations. So, for example, the OCSLA, it pretty much tells the Secretary of the Interior to you have to develop and promulgate regulations, and so we've done that.
Excuse me, Kurt.
Yep,
We do have a question.
I
Uh,
bet.
Question is, the terms rules and regulations, are they interchangeable in the context of the Federal Register?
Yeah, um, rules and regulations are pretty much the same thing. It gets a little different when we talk about the laws and the acts. Um, those are they come from a different place. Those are usually done through legislation, through that process, not through an agency action. So yeah, rules and regulations are pretty much interchangeable. So first off, we're required to develop regulations. Plain and simple, we have to do it. But I'm sure a lot of you guys go offshore and you see some interesting things. You see maybe stuff like this. Hey, that's some pretty good duct tape right there, right? Why do we need regulations? Because we see stuff like this sometimes. And for the most part, I like to think that most of the operators offshore, they want to do the right thing. But sometimes, you just need to ensure things don't happen, or bad things happen. Just like I'm sure the guy driving this forklift wasn't too happy. I'm sure he didn't want to drive that off the edge. All right. Now we're going to get into kind of the fun stuff. I'm going to go through really quick through the regulatory process before we get into the Federal Register, um, information from them. So a regulatory process, this is where you guys really get involved, is the initiating event. So whenever we start a rulemaking, there's always some type of initiating event. A lot of it's through either accidents or incidents, through some of the inspections. If you guys see a lot of the same things, we need to make sure that they don't happen or keep happening. This can be political in nature. This could be there's a lot of different factors. It could be from legislative. There's a lot of things that kind of initiate this rulemaking and get us on this path of developing a proposed and final rule. Once there's kind of this talk of doing a rulemaking, there's got to be some initial decisions from the department and from our management where we're going to go forward with certain rulemaking, and we have to put that on some agendas and kind of make it official that we're moving forward with these. So the rule development, this is done now kind of in teams. So as we develop the regulations, it's not just someone like me up in headquarters writing it by myself. We have a team that'll have representatives from regions, from districts, from a lot of the SMEs. So there's kind of a diverse background of who we include on the teams to make sure that the right people are kind of outlining and getting the regulations how they should be.
Hey, Kurt,
So
sorry.
yep.
How does one get on that team? Is it certain, just put your name in the hat, or how's that work?
Now that's usually based on SME availability, and kind of that's a management call. A lot of it because being involved in the rulemaking process, it takes a lot of time out of your normal work week and normal schedule. So we don't want to overload too many people on some of those. But yeah, it's all done through management and through availability, schedule availability.
All right, thanks.
Once we've developed the rule and it's ready to go, we have to have a review process from OMB, which is the Office of Management and Budget. They review they can review every rule for every federal agency or bureau in the government. So they can look at every rule that comes out, and they actually have to approve it before we can send it to the Federal Register for publication. That's kind of a big review part of the process. OMB is kind of a branch of the White House. It's their they that's what they can look at is all that stuff. And OMB, they usually look at a lot of the economics and environmental review pieces of the rulemakings. So once we get through that stage, we're ready to sign the rule. And what do? We send the rule to the Federal Register for publication. Um, I'll kind of explain later on, like I said, what the Federal Register is and how we interact with that. But that's kind of the big piece because this is what people will see on the public side. One of the most important parts of the regulatory process is the public comment. This allows the public to provide their input and their ideas towards the rulemaking and have all the stakeholders involved. This is a requirement for pretty much all government rule writing. There are some exceptions, but the public comment is one of the most important pieces of that process. So what we have to do is we have to take all the public comments, we have to review them, we have to address every single comment that comes in. So once we actually go through all those comments, review them, analyze them, we can make some final decisions about moving, or if you have to make any changes to going towards a final rule. So once again, once we're ready to get going with the final rule, we have to go through another OMB review. They get another piece at it, and the same process. Once the agency's ready to sign off on it, we'll send it to the Federal Register, and we will get it published so the public can view it. All right. So what is the Federal Register? I mean, they have a big part of what people see. So I just wanted to give you a little background of what they actually are. the Federal Register is actually a part of the National Archives and Records Administration. So what they are is they, I like to think of the Federal Register as basically the official government newspaper. They print everything that every government agency publishes. Um, so it's a big collection of everything, and so they use those records, and once they're published, they put them within the National Archives, and they're stored. So they have a record of all this stuff. Um, so the Federal Register is, like it says on their website, they're the daily journal of the United States government. It's kind of an interesting way to think of the Federal Register. It's just a big newspaper that all they do is they publish their this information. And um, the Federal Register is used, like I said, by every single government agency. So they get a lot of different materials that they have to publish. Um, so that kind of gets me to the purpose of the Federal Register. You guys are, kind of what I've alluded to so far. The Federal Register is used for publication of these government documents. Um, it's constituted as the Federal Register, but it does give us consistency for the government. The Federal Register requires us to format and to produce rules and other things in a very unique format that the entire government has to follow. We could get a whole day's training on just what that format is. It's a little strange, but it does provide consistency for the entire government. So that is one of the good things of the Federal Register. Another interesting fact about the Federal Register, they not only publish documents, they approve all documents incorporated by reference. So whenever we decide to incorporate a document into our regulations, we have to get that approved through the Federal Register. The actual documents are not published in the Federal Register. However, they have access to them and they review all of them and then they'll approve them. And we just have to allow reasonable access to those documents for the stakeholders. So, that's kind of an interesting thing. Why would the Federal Register need to approve documents incorporated by reference? A lot of it has to do with that consistency issue where, um, those documents, it's, we can't publish everything within that within those regulations. And so, this just gives us a way to have consistency with some of these standards. When we do get questions about these documents incorporated by reference, something that always seems to come up, just recently I received a question from one of the districts about how do you handle the normative references of a document incorporated by reference or, a second tier document. That's where, let's say you have a standard and it references another standard within that document. Can we actually enforce some of those documents? Um, the answer is actually yes and no. Um, you can enforce that document in as much as it is needed or necessary to become in compliance with that original document. So you just can't take that whole document as a blanket and use it. You can only use it for the pieces that it's referenced in that original document. So you kind of have to be careful with some of the normative references, but we still are allowed to enforce, those as long as it is used if it's required for that original document. And like I said, if you guys have any questions later on, you can always email me and I'll be happy to discuss it more. I'm just trying to throw out as much information as I can in a quick amount of time here. All right. So I have some examples of what the Federal Register print looks like. That's one of the drawbacks of the Federal Register is that it's kind of hard to follow. The Federal Register, it they put it in a condensed format with these three columns. They've been doing this forever. Um, so it kind of makes it hard to follow what you're actually reading because you have to go, scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, then go back up and scroll back down, go to the next column. It does make it hard, and a little burdensome to get through. But the Federal Register is actually getting better on their website. When we get through, I'll show you how to navigate the Register website. But they're making it easy, so they're going to try to publish or post on their website native format of the documents that they receive, so you can try to get it in easier to read version, so it's not broken up into these three columns. Another example, as you do pull up the Federal Register, when you look at the reg text in the Federal Register, this is a good example here. This is from the latest well control rule that we did last year. You'll notice there's like weird stars, and there's not all the regulations in there. There's only bits and pieces. This is some of that formatting that I talked about that the Federal Register requires. Is It's actually like those stars and the number of stars that gives specific instructions to the Federal Register about what they need to do to put this information into the um, Code of Federal Regulations. So, the Federal Register, they're just printing out the documents or publishing the documents, and once they do get published, they will update the Code of Federal Regulations, the ECFR. You guys have probably heard of those, and that's where you'll have the whole set of all the regulations. The Federal Register will just have the bits and pieces or the instructions to make sure that the CFR is amended correctly. So yeah, it's kind of disjointed. It's kind of hard to follow, but this Federal Register print example just shows the exact instructions of what the changes we're going to be making. So it takes a little bit of art to get used to reviewing some of these things. So I'd suggest to you guys to look at some of these and just get familiar with them and see how they're laid out, and it'll make your job a lot easier to be able to navigate those or these Federal Register examples. All right. So what gets published in the Federal Register? The Federal Register, as you guys probably guessed, it does publish proposed rules and final rules, but one of the biggest things it publishes are public notices. Also, we do get presidential actions such as executive orders and other things as well. I'll talk about the public notices real quick. Public notices could be things such as information collection notice, or it could be a notice of a workshop. There's notices could be almost anything. For Bessie, most of our publications in the notices section are information collection updates, because like I said, we have to update every single burden that we account for in our regulations every few years. So we're always constantly updating those. But yeah, for the main ones for us, it's the rules that we really look at in the Federal Register. Another interesting thing about the Federal Register is that it is not set up to collect public comments on rules or notices. The Federal Register is just what it is. It's a printing of a newspaper. It's putting the information out there. The Federal Register is improving their website, where they're including links to places, other websites that allow for public comment. For us, all public comments are included in regulations.gov. Regulations.gov has been set up for the government, and pretty much almost all of the federal agencies use regulations.gov for their rulemakings. What it is regulations.gov is a place where they have a docket, and you can upload the documents kind of in their native form if you want. So it's easy to read and go through. Also within regulations.gov, it not only publishes the rule, but you can attach associated documents like our economic analysis, our environmental reviews. So you can see all of the documents associated with a rulemaking. Also on regulations.gov, that's where the public submits all of their comments. Um, there's specific locations where you can see how to comment on those if you have an open rulemaking. If you do comment on a proposed rule through regulations.gov, those are all posted and viewable by everybody. So you can see every person that's actually commented on a rulemaking through regulations.gov. Sometimes we don't post some comments if they're inappropriate or have other things like that in them. We don't have to post those, but everything else we have to address. Yeah, so that's one big thing that you guys need to be aware of, that the Federal Register is not the place to comment at all. It's just putting information. Also, when we do publish a rule, um, there's certain sections within the rule that we have to include how to submit comments, and that's it's in the address section. And so we usually have the docket ID and web link to the regulations.gov, and we explain how we can send it in, like by email or mail it in if they want to. I think we even still have fax if somebody wants to fax us something. So that's specified within the actual rulemaking document itself, not anything special that Federal Register does. So now we'll get into playing around a little bit with the Federal Register. The Federal Register.
Hey, Kurt. Sorry.
Yes.
Did you want to talk about making sure you go through the? I might have missed it, but making sure you go through your chain of command, so to speak.
Yeah, sure.
Before actually addressing or sending things to the docket.
Yeah, sure. I can address that right now.
Okay. I didn't know if you did it later on, but I just want to make sure we didn't miss it.
Sure. Let me go back here. So, when you notice that there's going to be a public comment on, a rulemaking, it's kind of a good rule of thumb to first, if you want to comment on some rulemakings from an agency standpoint, we need to address those through our management first and kind of keep that stuff internal. I mean, I'm not, saying that you can't, the public comment period is open for everybody. It just kind of looks bad sometimes when we have internal discussions that could be handled internally that we have to address in the public. So, it's just a good rule of thumb that if you see a rulemaking come out and you have some questions or concerns about it, please raise those up to your management, to your district supervisor, through anybody to get that up. You can even send them to me. I will be happy to make sure that the rulemaking teams get that information, because we want to put out the best regulations that we can. Period. And the best way to do that is more internally. When we get comments like that publicly, it's kind of hard to deal with some of those, and it doesn't look very good. So I want to encourage you guys that if you see any rulemakings, please, yeah, comment on those, to your managers if you see some issues, because some you guys have a lot of you inspectors and engineers have a really unique perspective on how our rulemakings are, I guess, enforced or implemented. So we need to have that discussion, and you guys are important for that, because like I said, our goal as we write regulations is to make sure that they are correct and they are effective for not only us but for our stakeholders. How we handle regulations is a big piece of it. So yeah, so that's my recommendation for you guys. If I'll show you how to get notifications when new rules are coming out, and if you have those questions, feel free to submit those to me, and through your management, we'll get those addressed, through the regulations team. As we get into the Federal Register, I'll show you guys how to set up notifications, kind of how to view and to review documents from our bureau. So I just have the website for us to navigate. When you get to the Federal Register site, once you click on that web link, if you look on the top right hand corner here, there's either a sign in or a sign up click button. You know, to get a Federal Register account is really simple. All you have to do is hit sign up, put your government or any email you want, and you just have to put in you have to develop a passcode. And once you do that, they will send you a email confirmation to make sure that's, you know, set up how you want to. Takes a whole, 2 minutes to get an account set up for the Federal Register. Once you actually set that up, we'll go to the next one here. I'll show you how we can search and be able to find documents. So the easiest way that I've found to navigate the Federal Register is to scroll all the way to the bottom of the screen, and there's some tabs on the bottom that says Browse, and you can browse by agency. This makes it really easy to just identify, what bureau or agency you want to look at, because, like I said, the Federal Register is used for every government agency. So there is a lot of stuff in there. Every single day, tons of documents are being published. So this is just one of the easiest tricks I know to find, narrow down what you're looking for. So once you click on that Browse Agency, you can just scroll down, and our bureau's in there, and you can just click on that. Once you click on it, it'll pull up this page, and they have ours listed as Safety and Environmental Enforcement Bureau. I don't know why. It's listed under Department of Interior. But to set up a subscription to get notification on here, all you have to do is click that little subscribe button right here, circled in red. This, once you actually click that, this will set up your notifications whenever anything that our bureau publishes in the Federal Register, you'll get notification of that. And on the next screen, this kind of shows you what that will look like. So for us, for our bureau, we have 2 subscriptions available. One of them are just all the documents, basically from the Safety and Environmental Enforcement Bureau. The other one are documents deemed significant under Executive Order 12866. So what this is this is just kind of clarifying even further. When a rulemaking is deemed significant, that usually means that it has an economic impact of 100 million or more. So it's kind of the larger rules, some of the bigger, high-profile things that come out. That's usually what's deemed significant. So you can just have a specific link if you want to see some of those come out. So if you click both of these subscribes, you can identify whether you want to be notified when it's published or when it is filed on public inspection. The Federal Register will publish or will post documents like a day or 2 before they actually get published in the Federal Register for just a public inspection. They do that with the documents incorporated by reference as well. So I always just have it when it's published. That's when it hits the Federal Register. So you get it, right as it happens. That's how I have mine set up. So once you actually subscribe to it, you go back to your subscriptions here, and right here it shows that I have 1 subscription in active status here for our bureau. And if I click on that, I can go through any document that our bureau is involved in or is mentioned in. And so, yeah, it's nice. It'll list everything that they've published.
Yeah, that's really a great tool. I set it up every morning. If there's anything mentioned anywhere in any of the titles of the CFRs, I get an email that says Bessie's in the EPA, mentions the EPA or Coast Guard or whatever rulemaking is taking place. So it's a really neat thing, and I would encourage all of you to set that up. And look, another a note here on a separate issue. Meeting is set to expire in about 5 minutes. Just bear with me. Just stay on. We'll be able to rejoin it here in just as soon as it times out. So just be advised that 5 minutes in effect right now, and if it goes off before we're done, I'll get right back to you. You'll just have to rejoin the meeting. Thanks, Kurt.
Yep, no problem. Yeah, so the nice thing with the Federal Register is you can, like Joel said, you can set up subscriptions for any agency. So I know you guys deal a lot with the Coast Guard, or maybe with EPA, or anything that you want to, or you're interested in, to know if they publish any new documents. You can get notification of all those. So it's really a useful tool that the Federal Register has to do that. Because, honestly, a lot of times you guys might not get notification that there's a new rule coming out. I know you probably heard rumors or something, through the district, or some of those people working on the rules, but you don't actually see some of the rules. So this gives you an opportunity to see it right as soon as it hits the streets. It's a really useful tool. Kind of, I wanted to include all the ways that we post our regulations and our rules, so you guys can have access to them. That's the whole point of having rules. Or they need to be used and utilized and kind of followed properly. And I briefly talked about regulations.gov, uh, about the public comments. Regulations.gov is the place where it will have all of the associated rulemaking documents. It's really, really good. We have the ECFR is the best place to find the most current, up to date regulations. Some of those books, they don't get updated once a year. The ECFR is updated usually daily. The only problem with the ECFR is that it does not have all the background documentation. It does not have all the environmental economic reviews. It doesn't have the background preamble information of the rule. It only has what the reg text is going to be. So that's kind of the drawback of the ECFR. Regulations.gov has all of that information. We also post our stuff on our website. I gave you guys the Federal Register website. One thing that is published a lot is the executive orders. The Federal Register does have a link where you can set up notification on those executive orders as well, and I provided that link as well. Because the executive orders, even though we don't think of them as law, we still need to have to follow those executive orders in the actions of our government. So, and also the secretarial orders, we have those posted all on the DOI web page, basically. And they do issue secretarial orders every now and then. So the last thing I really want to talk about is how important you guys are into this regulatory process. Like I said before, you guys have a really unique perspective on the regulations. And we need that perspective on when we write our regulations, and when we how we enforce them. So if you guys see stuff that's wrong within the regulations, start making note of that. Document it, and send it on up through the management foods chain, or send it directly to me. We'll try to make sure we get those things corrected and make sure it's done right. So here's kind of an example from kind of personal to me, about a way that inspectors and actually some geologists noticed things that were being done within the government, and they didn't really listen to them. And I might not be around. Luckily, I am now, but I'll go through this kind of scenario here. Back in 1976, you guys will laugh. Yeah, that was the year I was born. Um,